A Missoula, Montana defense attorney referred to a 13-year-old victim of sexual assault as a temptress. Okay, how did it all start? The Missoulian reports, according to court documentation, Justin Griffith, 26, worked as a clinical care worker at Western Montana Addiction Services. So this is an addiction recovery place for teenagers, where he, quote, developed a sexual relationship with a 13-year-old patient in March of 2015. Griffith later told a detective that relationship lasted for a weekend. Lisa Kauffman, the defense attorney for Griffin, said Kaufman alleged there was a wild atmosphere. She seemed to blame it on the wild atmosphere at the treatment center with teenage girls who, quote, acted out sexually. She said Griffith had not received any training for how to handle such situations. And then later, over the prosecutor's repeated protests, here's what happened per the Missoulian. She said, she looks and acts like she's 18 years old. Attorney Lisa Kauffman told Missoula District Attorney Judge Deschamps, you should see the pictures of her and the hair and the makeup. And then later in a heated exchange with the prosecutor, she said, how about victims as temptresses? What do you think about that? The victim's mother, who was seated behind the attorneys, told Kaufman not to speak about her child that way. I was just making a little slam, Kaufman told her. About my daughter, the woman replied. And then after that, Kaufman apologized, but
so Lisa Kauffman is an embarrassment to not just women, to humanity, because she thinks that it's okay to point to a 13-year-old child, okay, and essentially blame her for being taken advantage of as she was in a rehab clinic trying to get clean, and a 26-year-old guy took advantage of her. So yeah, you're a terrible person and you shouldn't be an attorney. If that's the, like, I get it, if you're a defense attorney, you are going to find any and all ways to try to defend that person because that's your job.
Right.
But I believe that you can do your job without being incredibly insulting to the victim who was just taken advantage of. Calling her a temptress, like, what are we? Are we like in, like an ISIS camp somewhere where, you go ahead and you blame the female victim who was just raped or sexually assaulted? I mean, do you want to put women in burqas? Is that what you like? Like, that's insane. You should see her makeup and the way she dresses. So are you saying, A, that men can't control themselves when they see an attractive woman, which is insulting to men, and B, that women who present themselves in a certain way deserve to be sexually assaulted or raped?
I don't know how.
What is her thinking here?
Like, I get that if you're a defense attorney, like you said, you have to say some stuff. And what's sad is what this does to the victims in these cases. And that's why you hear time and time again how difficult it is for victims to come forward, because not only once it's out there do people know, and then they're looking at you as the victim of one of these things, but also the process of defending the accused is to say that it was the victim's fault, to say that she brought it on herself. The best line of this all, and it's weird to call it the best line, but it was super accurate from the judge in response to the idea that this girl was a temptress and that the defendant had a lack of training in this area. The judge said it's hardly a training issue not to have sex with a 13-year-old.
Absolutely, good.
It's just so obvious in that case.
So you want a drug rehab place to spend resources to train grown-ass men about how it's unlawful to sleep with 13-year-olds who are trying to get clean at said drug rehab center? Like, you think that that makes sense? He's 26 years old, he's not a child, okay?
Yeah, and
that's absurd.
It's so ridiculous, and then how much further do you need to go than just that one line? Do you need to then have them come into, okay, we're gonna do the training for this. We dressed a 13-year-old girl up as a temptress and you have to resist her for the next 20 hours. It's just like, just don't have sex with 13-year-olds. So that's pretty done with your training.
Let's put this method of defense or apply this method of defense in a different context and see how ridiculous it is. So I'm walking home, I see a car and someone has left their laptop, their MacBook Pro, on the passenger seat.
Right.
Okay, the car is locked, but I see the computer, And since it's right there in plain sight, I decide I'm gonna break the window, break into the car, steal the computer. I get caught. Do you think it's a good defense for me or my lawyer to say, well, you know, the victim here decided to leave the computer in plain sight, and as a result, the victim is to blame here? No, that's absolutely ridiculous. The person who has committed the crime is the criminal, okay? The person who steals the laptop, in this case it would be me, I would be the criminal.
But then again, you didn't have enough training on how not to steal laptops.
I mean, it just gets more and more absurd when you apply it to any other context.
I wasn't trained on how not to break a window and steal other people's property. I didn't get that in walking down the street training.
It's crazy.
Common sense. To follow up on what happened, a second count of sexual intercourse without consent was dropped as part of the guilty plea process. And the judge essentially said, listen, if I were to imagine one situation in which I could show some kind of understanding of the other guy's situation, or the 26-year-old Justin Griffith situation, would be if he was inexperienced and then we had an older but still minor personality disorder or something like that. But she's like, this guy's been, or the judge said, this guy's been around the block, and he seemed like a predator. So 20 years was what he was sentenced to. 16 of those suspended.
Oh my God, I was gonna say, damn, 20 years?
So it's 4 years. The judge recommends sexual offender treatment during the suspended portion. I don't know if the sentencing's gone through, but this is like the apparent compromise between what was suggested by the parole counselor and what the judge came down with was a recommendation of sexual offender treatment during the suspended portion of the sentence. But the judge said, there's no way I'm gonna suspend the whole thing like the defense suggested. Right. So that's that.
TYT membership gets you commercial-free Young Turks. Download it, stream it, podcast it, get all the network shows, and support independent media. TYTnetwork.com/join.